Let me bring in two of my great guests that I have today. Gigi Gonzalez out of Miami, Florida, DNA criminal defense lawyer, that being a father who was giving her tutelage along the way, just like myself, worked in the back room and her way all the way up to being a successful and awesome criminal defense lawyer. And we also have with us Neama Rahmani out of Los Angeles, California, a former AUSA out of San Diego, president and CEO of West Coast Trial Lawyers, specializing in catastrophic injuries. And I was impressed to hear that they have received over $1 billion, that's with a B, in settlements and judgments. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you for having
Thanks
us.
for having me, Bob.
Yeah, awesome to have you guys here. So listen, Gigi, let me throw to you first here. This is obviously a strange situation. It, by all indications, investigators, when you're looking into a crime like this, like I used to do when I was a prosecutor, are going to be looking at various things. And one of those things is going to be whether or not this person was looking to cause damage to individuals. But it would seem, Gigi, that was not the case here. What do you thought?
Yeah, I have to applaud the Nashville Police Department for their quick intervention. It was their investigation and their steadfastness in resolving this that saved lives. So just a really quick applause to them. And I gotta ask if he really did intend to hurt people and to kill people. If you know he had that warning, that siren in the middle of the night, early morning, saying 3 minutes till blast off, everyone get out. I think he was definitely trying to inflict as much damage as possible, but that warning tells me that maybe he didn't want to actually hurt anybody, but to maybe send a message. I would love to know what his motive is, and I'm sure that the police department and FBI will do everything in their power to figure it out.
Yeah, Neema, to that point, that's it. That's what the question is about. One, is there going to be anybody else that's involved in it? So far, law enforcement has ruled that out. And then secondarily, what was the motivation behind this? Just to give the audience a little background, Werner was issued an explosive user permit handler's license in November of 2013. And interestingly, in November of 2013, an alarm contractor license. He worked in IT. He was a computer person. And one of the people that was interviewed that knew him said, Tony Werner, we knew, is a nice person who never exhibited any behavior which was less than professional. I'd imagine, Neema, that they're going to be really looking through the electronic records and doing a psychosocial history, which includes witness interviews, family, friends, and things of that nature. What are your thoughts on how the investigators are going to go about trying to establish a motive in a case like this? Remember, I think it's Las Vegas. To this day, I don't think we have a motive for that mass shooting.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Bob. I mean, already law enforcement, they've executed search warrants. They've gone into his residence. They've talked to family members. That's actually how they got the DNA to identify him. But, here you have an individual in Warner, never been on law enforcement's radar. Just like Gigi said, he clearly wasn't trying to inflict mass casualties because of the timing of the explosion and the warnings. That's not common. This wasn't a busy Friday afternoon, as law enforcement said. This is early in the morning, Christmas Day, with warnings to folks to evacuate. So, it's unclear what the motivation was, whether this was really just a big suicide attempt, which was successful, and an attempt to inflict damage on the AT&T building, which was adjacent there, because at least as of the information we have now, there is no clear motive, no ideology, nothing that would suggest this is an act of domestic terrorism. As far as other folks involved, um, again, there's a couple property transfers to a woman, but that is the only other individual who may have had any involvement whatsoever in this explosion.
Yeah, and domestic terrorism is a word that people are being very careful in using if it's not connected actually to an ideology or for some political influence. We don't know. Some have suggested there may be a mental health illness because many people are out there thinking that AT&T's 5G network is getting into their brains and their heads. And I don't discount this. There are a lot of people out there, especially with these conspiracy theorists, and who knows if that was the motivation. Got to move on, guys, to something very interesting out of Detroit. Now, there were a lot of riots that occurred there after the George Floyd incident, and there was a lot of police-related activity. And Black Lives Matter sect called Detroit Will Breathe basically was out there protesting and demonstrating. They filed a lawsuit. Many of the individuals that were arrested indicating that the police used excessive force and that these individuals had their civil rights violated. Well, Detroit shot back in a very unusual way by filing a counter lawsuit in this case for civil conspiracy, arguing that this group, which is incorporated in the state of Wisconsin, this group actually formulated plans on social media platforms advocating violence against police officers. And I don't know if guys have had a chance to read this detailed counter complaint filed by the police department in the city of Detroit. They're not laying down. They gave very, Gigi, specific information about the social media posts that were out there, up to and including somebody saying take badges and teeth, and other videos that were ascribing to violence directed specifically at the police officers. Gigi, what do you think about this counter lawsuit? And can you please explain to the audience the difference between our First Amendment right to protest peaceably, as opposed to riotously?
Thank you. So the civil lawsuit, the countersuit by Detroit, it's not surprising. Anytime these cities or police departments or what have you, they get sued, they often file a countersuit to affirm some sort of defense, right? And here they're saying that these protests were not actually protests; they were thinly veiled guises to cause mass destruction and to attack police officers and public officials. Now, they may have evidence of this, but they're going to have to
All right.
part of the protest of the Detroit for Breathing group, and they're going to have to prove. Oh, am I disconnected?
Keep going. I can hear you.
I apologize. Thank you. They're going to have to prove that those people were actually involved in the protest with the organizers and that they acted in accordance with what the organizers organized within this protest was to attack cops. Now, we have a First Amendment right to protest. We have the First Amendment right to take to the street and petition for change. However, you do not have the right to go and riot and to use the reason why you're protesting as a way of getting what you want and to attack police officers and to cause destruction of public property. That is not a First Amendment right that is dedicated within the Constitution. And if it is true what the city of Detroit is affirming, the protesters are going to have to put up evidence that they were not involved in the planning of attacking police officers and go forward from there.
Yeah, Neema, the point that's interesting here is that I used to do civil rights work for many, many years. This is a very interesting lawsuit that there is a counter lawsuit, and all the ones I filed as a plaintiff's attorney, I never had a counter lawsuit filed. But I think what they're pointing to here is that this was an organized movement incorporated by the state of Wisconsin, and that these individuals, to Gigi's point, there are so many quotes that are in this counter lawsuit, which was clear to me. It was also a public relations document that they wanted to set the record straight that the individuals that are suing them and that were arrested did very specific acts, and they're listing those acts down, including certain points in time where they're reaching out through their social media platforms from their official organization saying, come on down, we're holding the streets. They're going to have to kick us out, throw us out, use whatever force to get us out. This is not acceptable in my mind. And I think the police department did this both for the public relations point of view, but also because it's an organization, there'll be discovery now. And they're going to find out where the funding is coming from, where the money is coming from, and they're going to also have Fifth Amendment rights to remain silent because they're still within the statute of limitations of potentially being charged with a crime still. And more evidence may come out because you're a civil litigator, being plaintiffs, now they have to speak where they otherwise didn't have to before. What do you think?
Yeah, Bob, I agree. And I agree with Gigi as well. This is absolutely expected. If you're going to bring a civil lawsuit, you have to be prepared and anticipate these types of claims being made in terms of either an affirmative defense or a counterclaim. And that's what we're seeing here, right? Both on the merits and for PR purposes, right? I mean, let's take a step back. Black Lives Matter, they're the ones that initiated this lawsuit against the city, right? There was a lot of destruction. There was a lot of injuries that were caused, not by the peaceful protesters, but by the rioters, right? So, the fact that the city has filed a counterclaim is absolutely expected in a case like this. Now, really, what the counterclaimants need to do now is to tie those looters, those rioters, to the folks that are organizing the Black Lives Matter movement. So that's what you hit. You know, what you really brought up is really that sort of discovery, right? And that's why they're going to social media and saying, hey, these individuals, this is why they should be properly associated with BLM. And that's why BLM should be responsible for the civil damages that resulted therefrom.
It's going to be a really interesting suit to follow. If our audience hasn't had an opportunity, try to read this counter complaint, because to the point of both of our great guests here, they are specifically tying in with quotes and actual evidence with regard to what it was that these individuals did to incite specific violence directed at the police. Guys, we got to take a quick break, but our next block is going to be filled with star-studded activity like Lori Loughlin, as well as the Tiger King, the guy that just won't go away. We'll be right back.